this is one way to also protect relationships and people that you're doing life with and finances with.
I was just driving one day. I didn't know I was going to total my car, but
Nope.
it happened.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And praise God, I'm here sitting here talking with you today.
Absolutely. One thing it teaches you is that when those things come up unexpected, it teaches you immediately what the wisdom behind doing it.
When you make decisions out of fear, you're going to make the wrong decisions.
Yeah.
It's even for the wrong motive, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, all right, so we're talking about the savings jar today. We've been going through the 5 jars budgeting method that you showed my siblings and I at a young age, and you implemented, man, I don't even know, quite a while ago, probably a few decades ago, right?
But a couple.
Been a couple decades. Well, last week we talked about the spending jar, which when it comes to budgeting, everyone freaks out about. So we were like, you know what? Let's address that one first.
Yes.
So now let's talk about the savings jar.
Okay.
Which is an important jar.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like this one, more so than the spending, can actually provide some more peace of mind when it comes to just going through the ebbs and flows of life, if you will. And so you'd written down on here, I'll say it, but money can't buy happiness.
It cannot.
But have you ever had a flat tire in an emergency fund?
Yes.
Because that's
pretty close.
pretty close. That's pretty close to happiness right there.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, crap on the side of the road. But hey,
right.
I got the money to get to, Discount Tire or wherever you got to go.
Right. Yeah.
And get it fixed. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have kind of like a personal, actual like life application story that I want to share about this.
Sure.
But we should probably give a little bit of an overview of what the savings give first.
Okay.
So give me kind of, first little synopsis of what the savings jar is. Give me a little bit explanation of that.
Sure.
And then we can dive into it.
So savings jar is what I would just call the peace of mind kind of part of your plan financially, where your stress-free adulting fund, if you will, allowing yourself to, and we'll go through the nuances of this, but to have money set aside that can take care of some of those bigger purchases, some of those larger unexpected emergencies that do come in life. They will come. And having living expenses set aside. It's that place where you can go to be able to handle some of those situations that arise in life without having to affect what we talked about last week. You're paying your rent, you're paying your utilities out of your spending, and you've kind of budgeted for those things. But now this place is where you can go when you have those unexpected things without affecting the other jar. And that's where you begin to see sometimes the power of doing this kind of a structure where you're like, oh, no, I can still pay rent, I can still pay for my groceries because I have this over here to take care of this unexpected thing that happened.
Yeah. And according to Bankrate in 2023, 57% of Americans couldn't cover a $1,000 like last minute expense or emergency.
Yes.
Which is incredible.
It is.
That's a lot of Americans.
It is. And that it's kind of a scary thought because especially with what people have been experiencing with inflation and rising costs, not being able to take care of a $1,000 emergency, over half of Americans, some of these emergencies now kind of creep toward that $1,000 mark just because of the rising costs of inflation. So that can be a very scary thing and a very stressful thing on a lot of families, a lot of people. And so hopefully messages like this can help people maybe get a strategy or an idea how they, can start working toward, if they haven't already, or help improve on what they're already doing, so they don't find themselves in that situation. Maybe we can help reverse that statistic.
Right, because $25 a week towards an emergency fund is $25 more than you were putting there before.
Right, exactly.
And, the savings jar isn't purely meant to be an emergency fund, but I feel like having that emergency fund gives you so much less stress about life.
Yeah.
And the uncertainty of it.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because If you're just budgeting for spending, you have all your things that you know about budgeted out.
Mm-hmm.
But you get that flat tire, you get that medical expense.
Yeah,
Um, you just don't know what's going to happen, right?
exactly. And I think that there's probably studies out there, I mean, psychologically, how much stress on relationships, marriages, and things that finances bring. This is one way to also protect relationships
Mm-hmm.
and people that you're doing life with and finances with, is when you have this kind of a planning in there, it can really help protect against those
Becoming
difficult conversations.
yeah,
Yeah.
very true.
Things that can come.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah.
So let's break down some of the layers
Okay.
of the spending jar. So we talked about the emergency fund
Okay.
so
Mhm.
flat tires, surprise medical bills,
Sure.
busted water heaters,
Yes.
like house expenses.
Mhm.
You know, not necessarily for vacations.
Okay.
Not for I deserve these days kind of
Yes.
deal.
Mhm.
You can kind of budget that out in your spending.
Mhm.
But you can, if you're saving up for a bigger purchase,
Mhm.
some furniture, a new car,
Mhm.
you can put money away in your spending or in your savings for that.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
So any short term, more so expensive goals that you want to hit, right?
Absolutely.
Or even long term. Um, but one of the big things I wanted to hit is you want to have at least 3 to 6 months. Well, you're not going to start there, obviously, but you want to get to the point where you have at least 3 to 6 months of monthly expenses in your savings jar
Yeah.
in case something were to happen.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where my story comes in.
Okay.
So before this, for
Mhm.
those who don't know,
Mhm.
I worked at a sub shop
Mhm.
and I was managing the restaurant.
Mhm.
And then I switched careers about like a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
Um, and I was learning the career. I was coming into the practice with you and
Mhm.
learning, how to financially plan with people and learning the, knowledge, taking tests and getting certified and doing all the studying and everything, right?
Yes.
And so there wasn't income immediately, right?
Mhm.
And so I had to have some sort of buffer in my savings account, right?
Mhm.
And things unexpectedly came up during that time, right?
Yes.
Unexpected expenses. I had to get repairs on my car, and
Mhm.
then I totaled my car,
Mhm.
and so now I've got to look for a new car. That happened recently.
Yes.
But one thing I'm really thankful for is community,
Yeah.
because we have people in our church community that were just like, hey, use my car,
Mhm.
like take this extra car that we have. You can use it until you figure it out.
Mhm.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
But, not everyone has that community. And so having that buffer in your savings can be so important because things like that happen, like
Yep.
I was just driving one day. I didn't know I was going to total my car, but
Nope.
it happened.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And praise God, I'm here sitting here talking with you today.
Absolutely.
But, things like that happen, and you have career changes, and you
Yep.
want to be able to support yourself and or your family during that career change. And you had a very similar experience.
Yeah.
I don't even know, probably like over a decade ago now, close to 2 decades ago now, which you had shared previously in another episode. But
Yeah. Yeah. Where we were transitioning into this, this career. Yeah. 17 years ago now. It was in 2008, which, is funny in itself because that was a very, not funny, but it's kind of, when you think about it, it was economically, 2008 was a very difficult time in America. It
yeah,
was
not
the
a great
housing
time
crisis.
to switch careers.
Yeah, a lot of people might have said, "What are you doing, switching careers during an economic meltdown?" But a lot of people lost their jobs and had no choice. This was a choice of mine. I was switching from one, um, vocation to another, and to be able to do that, to go into this industry, it's there was tests to take and training and all sorts of things, and we needed to have that buffer so we could transition into it.
Mhm.
And thankfully, that's what carried us through to lift us off, and we never had to look back.
Right.
So I'm very thankful for that. But that, I think that's one of the things that this brings up, is that when you do that, one thing it teaches you is that when those things come up unexpected, it teaches you immediately like why, what the wisdom behind doing it. It's like, okay, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. So if I'm switching careers, if I have this emergency, I actually have time to figure things out. I don't have to panic because, I'm used to just getting a check every 2 weeks and I'm not going to have one 2 weeks from now. What am I going to do? You now can breathe for a minute, can process, and take some time to figure out the next step you're going to take without having to panic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the power. One of the, I think, great powers that the savings jar brings.
Bringing that peace of mind, that's so important to actually make good, well thought out decisions. Because when you're stressed out physically, like it releases chemicals in your body that make it harder to make decisions,
Yes.
make it hard to have a clear mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
When you make decisions out of fear,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to make the wrong decisions.
Yeah.
Because it's even for the wrong motive, right?
Right.
Even if you break it down, you make the same decision, one out of confidence and one out of fear. You made the wrong decision because you made it out of fear.
Right.
Right. You want to make decisions in confidence, and it helps bring that peace of mind so you can take a step back, not have to rush something, and just figure it out.
And I got time to maybe go talk to other people, like if you have mentors or parents or people in your life that you trust their wisdom or their opinions about, where you're going, and you have that money set aside, you have time to kind of bring all that counsel together,
Yep.
have discussions and think it through. And, if you're a praying family, pray it through until, confidently, like you just said, what the next step is. I think that is invaluable.
Yeah.
You can't put a price on that.
And that's something that I got for a long time, but now that I have started doing it, it's changed how I see it. But everyone is so like, no one can know about my finances. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody is so
Mm-hmm.
secretive or like withheld in that area, when it is so valuable to talk it through with people.
Yeah.
And for like have somebody you trust. I don't think you should share your finances with everyone. I don't think that's wise.
Mm-hmm.
But having somebody, it could be a friend, it could be a spouse, it can be a parent, it could be
A financial advisor.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Look at that, right? But it could be somebody like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And just getting that second opinion, third opinion, even sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And walking it out with somebody. I think, take a step away from finances for a second. Walking decisions out in life with people,
Yeah.
is going to get you in a better spot every time.
Yes.
Not don't walk it out with everybody, right?
Right.
But with somebody you trust and somebody who isn't necessarily going to agree with you all the time.
Sure.
Right? Somebody who's going to challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
But so many, I don't know. I've noticed that people in your age bracket, really old, or even people in my age bracket, they feel like they got to figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about it with other people. Right.
Right.
Because I've noticed, so if you're talking with, I'm talking with one of my friends about, sports or, just anything besides finances, they can have a pretty good conversation about it, well thought out. They've had a lot of experience speaking with other people about it, so they have a more well-rounded view.
Mm-hmm.
But if you try and talk to them about their finances, it's very one-sided and not as well processed out because they don't process it out with other people. It's only their processing.
Yeah.
And so it's not as well-rounded.
Mm-hmm. That's a good observation, I think. And not taking a big left turn here, but it kind of brings me back to like something like parents can do with their kids around that to help them learn how to process their finances out as they get older, is like when you guys were younger too, and I saw other parents do this, like your kid comes to you and says, "Dad, I want this toy," or, I really want to be able to get whatever it is. They saw something in the store, they saw an ad, they saw something, they really want this thing, right? Is to get them to learn, to teach them how to process when they're younger so they grow up in a mindset of processing out their finances. One thing like we used to do with you guys, and parents, you can do this, is you can say, okay, you want X, whatever this object is, this toy, this new shiny thing, okay? We're going to wait 30 days. and then we're going to go back. Now, I know for some of you parents are like, my kid would never wait 30 days. And it sounds like, but
They'll
30
probably
days,
forget
15,
about it in 30 days.
15 days, 30 days. And that's probably that's the point,
Mhm.
right? Some time, just separate from and say, okay, we'll come back to this in a certain number of days. And then when you come back, you ask them, do you still want this thing? Sometimes they're going to say, no, kind of wore off. The initial emotion, the dopamine hit of seeing the thing wore off, and they're like, no, I don't want that anymore. Okay, money saved.
Yep.
Right? They might say, yes, I still do. Okay, great. Now you still want it. Now we're going to make a plan. You're going to save for the thing. Now, I don't know how much it costs and how long it'll take them, but you set up a plan of how long it's going to take to save the money, and you make a goal with them and you process it out. And then once the money is saved or on the way to saving, you're going to say again, okay, we've got the money now. Now we're going to go buy the item. You can ask them, you still want it? They might say, you know what? I don't. Maybe they change their mind after the saving's done. That happened. And when that happens, now what happens? You don't spend the money on the thing they don't want anymore, but you've got this money saved now. So they learned the value of saving the money and processing and taking it, taught them subconsciously to take time thinking through. Some things I think I want initially, I don't end up really needing or wanting. And that's a good lesson, right? And if they end up still wanting it after you save the money, then you go make the purchase and they learn the value of taking the time to patiently save and go and buy the thing. And that teaches them the process. And so I think to your point, as you're bringing up earlier, having community and people to process things we trust, a lot of times it may happen for, like you said, it sounds one-sided when you're talking with people because they maybe never learned how to process it.
Mm-hmm.
So we can teach our kids at a young age, so it just becomes part of their life to learn how to honestly, openly talk about it. I think it's really a healthy thing to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is very right. And it must have worked because I still do that subconsciously to this day. So
Yep.
it works. It
Yeah.
works out, I guess.
Yeah.
But even as an adult, you can do that for yourself.
Yep, absolutely.
I think it's great. So what are some, when it comes to practicals,
Mm-hmm.
when setting up a savings account
Mm-hmm.
and, people are saying, okay, without giving, because we don't know everyone's situation, obviously, but like some general practicals that we can give to people
Sure.
to start out
Okay.
saving.
Yeah. So people watching this are going to be at different stages.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are going to be really far down the road and have been doing this as just a normal practice. Some people haven't even started. There's young people maybe watching this. Okay. So young people, if you're just starting out, I think last week we did this with like the saving. We challenged them on the spending jar. See if you can do it on half of what you're making, right?
Yep.
Okay. So on the saving for young people, if you're just starting this out, you said, if I'm going to try to live on spending only half of what I make, try taking 10% of what you're making and put it in your savings. Just try that. See what happens after 6 months. How much money will you have there? In just a short amount of time. If you're in a place where you're like, man, I couldn't do 10% right now, or just really struggling, just try with some amount, $10, $25. I think you brought up before. Just pick a small amount and just start doing it. The amount is not as important right now in those situations as it is just to develop a habit of doing it.
Yeah.
To get in the regular practice of doing it. And do that for yourself and just watch it continue to grow and grow each and every week. And what you may find is you start with your $10 or $25, you start doing that, and then you realize, I actually have a little bit more I could put in there, as you start working through your budget and other things, and then you can just keep adding to that. But try to get to at least around 10% if you can, to into that savings jar as you work toward that 3 to 6 month cushion, and then your bigger purchases on top of that, and so forth. That's just a mini challenge, just to out there. And if you're already doing it, like if you've already been doing it, it's been a habit. See if you can increase it by 5%,
Right.
and just to give it a little more of a boost and see how much further it can take you.
Yeah. What I would always say, like, it's helpful for people who really like organization too.
Mhm.
It's really helpful to have some sort of, it can be in your banking app, or you can get another app, or have some sort of spreadsheet to label out your savings too, so
Yeah.
you know like how much of your savings is allocated to different things, right? Because some of it's an emergency fund, and some of it is 3 to 6 months of expenses. Some of it's I'm saving up for a new car,
Hmm.
all these different things,
Yeah.
right? And so having that divvied out can be helpful instead of just seeing your bank account and seeing a lump sum in there, and you're like, how much is going towards this again?
Right.
You know?
Exactly. I think that's a really good point because again, we'll go back to our original when we talked about the overview of the 5 jars is we're giving every dollar a job,
Yeah.
or as into your vernacular, they're giving it a name. So if you're using programs like Quicken or any kind of application that's linking your accounts, if you're doing anything like online or if you're doing it manually, some people I'm sure are still using Excel or maybe writing it all out. Some of these programs have things called savings goals where you can label it new car, emergency fund. You can give it specific names, and when you allocate the money there, you know exactly what you have for those things. There's gonna be some people who really need that kind of organization. Yeah, there's programs that can and software out there that you can do that.
Yeah. I think this is going to be really this can be difficult for people.
Yeah.
Going through all these 5 jars as we continue to go through it can be difficult because it's almost like a change of paradigm. It's like relearning
Yeah.
how you do things, right?
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to do it exactly the way that we do it.
Nope.
But these are general basic principles that are tried and true
Mm-hmm.
and can really help you get out of a bad spot,
Yeah.
right? Because when it comes to the savings jar, it's not about, when it comes to any budgeting, it's not about being the buzzkill.
Right.
But when
Restrictive.
yeah, it's not restrictive.
No.
It helps give all of your dollars a job. It keeps you from just spending based on emotion and without any planning. It actually helps give you freedom and security
Does.
and defense against life.
I guess that's the key word right there. It gives an element of freedom in your life. It's, money that money can't buy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like putting some sort of structure to it actually creates more freedom.
Yep.
In the long run.
And it brings peace, less stress. There's so many other great things, great fruit that's produced from using these principles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a hard paradigm shift for you when you first started this out?
Yeah. When I first started, it was, it was exciting when I was learning about it at first because for me,
Mhm.
I felt like, oh, finally, like something like an answer was coming to something I wanted to understand, but didn't understand when I was a lot younger.
Right. Yeah. Way
Back.
Way
Yeah,
back
way
in
back.
the day.
And so I kind of felt like, oh, finally. But at the same time, wasn't easy to make the transition. There was an adjustment period to go from doing nothing close to it to starting something new. It took a minute, if you
Mhm.
will, but I'm glad we did it. I was still committed. I had to commit to it. And then we started making the adjustments. And within 6 months to 8 months, I started seeing the power of what we were doing. It was kind of like, I could just feel like there was an exhale I can remember letting out that I didn't even know I was holding on to.
Mm. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, next week we're going to talk about the investment jar.
Yes.
Which I'm excited for.
Me too.
But if you missed the last 2 weeks, we gave an overview of the 5 jars.
Yep.
And did the spending jar.
Yep.
Last week. So if you missed those two, make sure to go watch those.
Yep.
So when you're caught up, talked about the savings jars today.
Yep.
And investment jar next week.
Yeah. And so we thank everyone for listening today. Really glad that you're joining us. We thank you for the comments that many of you have been leaving. So if you could do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and maybe leave your personal stories about your budgeting, your highs and your lows, and any story that you want to share will be helpful to us. We'd love to read about it in the comment section. But until next time, we will talk to you soon about investing.